Hello, dear students. Welcome to this digital learning platform of Department of Collegiate Education. Today, in this video lecture, we are going to discuss dramatic monologue and its characteristics. This concept is part of background study of Victorian literature. Let's see how dramatic monologue is important. What is dramatic monologue? What are its important characteristics in this lecture? Okay, well, let's go to the beginning here. If I take the word dramatic, the phrase dramatic monologue, you see two words here. One is dramatic and the other is monologue. The word dramatic can tell you that it has something to do with drama. ಡ್ರಮ್ಯಾಟಿಕ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನು ಅಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಡ್ರಾಮಾಕ್ಕೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಿಸಿದ ಒಂದು ಅರ್ಥವನ್ನು ಕೊಡುತ್ತೆ. ಮೊನೊಲಾಗ್ ಈಸ್ ಅನದರ್ ವರ್ಡ್ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ರಿಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಟು ಡ್ರಾಮಾ. Okay, you know the drama or plays, you're familiar with the word. And when we come to the word monologue, it's a technical word. So a literary word. You see, a monologue in a drama is a technique used by a writer where a character addresses audience or another character in the play itself. A single character addresses audience or the characters within the play and delivers a long speech. For example, you might have studied Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare. There, Mark Antony, after the death of Julius Caesar, makes a monologue. He addresses the audience there within the play. So there is also another technique in the play which is similar to this monologue, that is soliloquy. In a soliloquy, a character sometimes addresses audience or he speaks to himself or herself. There he expresses or she expresses their personal feelings. So these two techniques are background to the concept dramatic monologue. When we come to the concept dramatic monologue, it has nothing to do with drama. Okay, so the concept dramatic monologue is a poetic form. In poetry, if a poem, the poem in the form of a speech or narrative by an imagined person is known as dramatic monologue. In the sense, it has certain characteristics of drama, but it is used in poetry. ಒಂದು ಪದ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ಡ್ರಾಮಾದ ಕ್ಯಾರೆಕ್ಟರಿಸ್ಟಿಕ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಆಫ್ ಎ ಸ್ಪೀಚ್ ಆರ್ ನರೇಟಿವ್ ಬೈ ಆನ್ ಇಮ್ಯಾಜಿನ್ಡ್ ಪರ್ಸನ್. ಒಂದು ಮಾತಿನ ರೂಪದಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಪದ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನೀವೇನು ನೋಡ್ತೀರಿ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಮೊನೊಲಾಗ್ ಇದೆ, ಆದರೆ ಇದು ಮೊನೊಲಾಗ್ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಎ ಪೋಯಮ್. Therefore, it's technique used by poetry writers as dramatic monologue. Okay, let's go to the explanation. That is, it's a poem in the form of a speech or narrative by an imagined person. Yeah, it's in the form of a speech. Yes, in a dramatic monologue, a speaker addresses some audience and delivers a speech. It's often a narrative by an imagined person. Narrative means it's like telling a story. ಕತೆ ಹೇಳುವ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಘಟನಾವಳಿಗಳನ್ನು ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು ಇರುತ್ತೆ. And an imagined person. See, this is very important. The speaker of the dramatic monologue is not the one who writes it. I mean the poet. He is somebody who is other than the poet. And he is an imagined person sometimes, who delivers a speech within a poem. Therefore, a dramatic monologue is a poem in the form of a speech or narrative by an imagined person. Okay, then what's the purpose of dramatic monologue? Yeah, there is a definite purpose here, that a speaker wants to make a self-revelation. That means he wants to reveal us his feelings, emotions, his perceptions of his age. Therefore, the major purpose here is self-revelation, revealing one's self. ತನ್ನನ್ನು ತಾನು ತನ್ನ ಪರ್ಸೆಪ್ಷನ್ ಏನಿದೆ, ಗ್ರಹಿಕೆ ಏನಿದೆ, ಆ ಪ್ರಪಂಚದ ಆವತ್ತಿನ ಒಂದು ಗ್ರಹಿಕೆಯನ್ನು ಪ್ರಪಂಚಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ರಿವೆಲೇಷನ್. ಸೊ ಅದನ್ನು ಮಾಡುವಂಥದ್ದು ಇದರ ಉದ್ದೇಶವಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ರಿಮೆಂಬರ್, This self-revelation is often made in a critical situation using series of events. On the critical situation, the social milieu or the ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ ಸಂದರ್ಭ ಹೇಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಒಂದು ಕ್ರಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಸಿಚುವೇಶನ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. The poet identifies something which is very serious trend or something which is very dangerous or something which is a very important part of society, and such a juncture he places his speaker and delivers the speech through him. Therefore a critical situation is very much important as another aspect, and it differs from monologue and soliloquy. Therefore in a monologue what happens, it's not about any particular social situation, and moreover here a single character addresses other audience, or within the play also addresses audience. And in a soliloquy it's a personalized feelings of a speaker, needn't be something which has to do with the society, or it needn't be a completely self-revelation. Whereas when come to the dramatic monologue, it has something to do with the critical situation and self-revelation. Therefore it differs from the earlier concepts that we discussed in the beginning, monologue and soliloquy. And it also differs from lyric poetry. For example, if I take John Donne's canonization, there John Donne asks his friend not to disturb him, because he wants to make or he wants to continue his love making. There it's a imagination that fills it, not the reality, not the self-revelation. It's not about any critical situation. So a lyric poetry is therefore different from dramatic monologue. Okay, so somehow you got the idea of dramatic monologue, that it's a poem in the form of a speech by an unidentified speaker addressing sometimes an unidentified audience also. Let's see some important characteristics in the next part. Yes, you know about M.H. Abraham's A Glossary of Literary Terms, a famous and a very useful book for all of us to refer to technical terms related to literature. As for M.H. Abraham, there are three important characteristics. That is, it's a single person who delivers a speech in a specific situation. Yeah, you see here, repetition, a single person. So the speaker is always a single speaker for a dramatic monologue, and he delivers a speech. Yeah, he delivers a speech here. It's not done through action. In drama, you can see that speech is accompanied by physical actions and other aspects. But here, it's entirely through the speech in the form of a poem, and it uses a specific situation, a critical situation. That is very important. And another one that I identified in the first sentence is it addresses an unknown audience. Okay, that we don't have to we do not notice who is exactly the audience there. It may be someone who is a passive listener, or it may be to us, the readers. Therefore addresses an unknown audience. And the major aspect here, as we saw in the last part also, that is the speaker reveals his temperament and character. Self-revelation. His temperament, his feelings, his thoughts, and his entire character is revealed through dramatic monologue. Let's see other important characteristics. So here you observe the speaker is in the most momentous or critical situation. So some social milieu that demands his response, that has a certain thing to be referred. So anyhow, we see that's a momentous or a critical situation. The poem includes his reaction to that situation. The speaker's response to the situation is now documented in the form of a poem. Therefore, that critical situation is the core element in dramatic monologue. In most of the cases, he expresses his anguish. He expresses a kind of disillusionment. That becomes very important in this process. Okay, when we come to another aspect, that is, the poet not only expresses his anguish, his disillusionment or his disappointment, but also makes a self-introspection. ಇಂಟ್ರಾ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಅಲ್ವಾ, ತನ್ನನ್ನು ತಾನು ಅವಲೋಕಿಸಿಕೊಳ್ಳುವ ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ. ಥ್ರೂ ದ ಪೊಯೆಟ್, ಥ್ರೂ ದ ಸ್ಪೀಕರ್, we also introspect ourselves. That's the speciality of a dramatic monologue. Okay, so then we, for example, we can take this example of Dover Beach. In Dover Beach, I have taken this from the poetryfoundation.org. The link is there in the below, in the description. You can definitely click on the link and access these points by typing the title. So in the Dover Beach, for example, you see the sea is calm tonight, the tide is full, the moon lies fair upon the straits on the French coast. The light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. Come to the window, sweet is the night air. See the line, come to the window, sweet is the night air. You see here that the speaker here is in a critical situation because we don't get any idea, of course, in the very first part, but still it continues to give us the sea of faith, or the situation where Victorian society is facing the decline of faith. The poem is about that. Therefore, it's a critical situation. And as we saw in the last part, that you see he addresses some listener, come to the window. We don't know who is that listener. He's an unidentified person, and we don't even understand who is the speaker also. And he expresses his anguish in the following lines. In the later lines, you see his anguish over the situation of the Victorians, where there is a declining of faith and the confusions created out of that. Okay, let me move on to next one. And as you saw in the very beginning lines of Dover Beach a few seconds ago, that it is an abrupt beginning. There is no introduction like that. So it becomes a very abrupt beginning. Abrupt ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು, ಒಂದು ಅಸಂಗತವಾಗಿ ನೇರವಾಗಿ ಒಂದು ಇಂಟ್ರಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಮೂಲಕ ಹೋಗುವಂಥದ್ದಲ್ಲ, ನೇರವಾದ ಸಡನ್ ಆದಂಥ ಬಿಗಿನಿಂಗ್ ಅನ್ನು, ಎ ಸಡನ್ ಬಿಗಿನಿಂಗ್ ಅನ್ನು ನೀವು ನೋಡ್ತೀರಿ. ಸರಿ, ಸೊ ಇಟ್ ಬಿಗಿನ್ಸ್ ವಿತ್ ದ ಸೀ ವಾಸ್ ಕಾಮ್. You see the way it opens with sea. We don't know what sea and what kind of background is there for this. So it becomes suddenly very arresting opening, catchy, attractive opening also. It makes us go through the poem to see what is it about, right? Anyhow, then again another observation is what has gone before is suggested very cleverly. I mean, we need some background, but it is not revealed in an explicit manner or in an open way. Rather, it is said in an implicit or hidden way. It is suggested through some clever means. Yeah, it often opens with a reference to the past, and then the focus is mainly on the present. It doesn't certainly focuses on the past, but the focus is on the present, but it gives some reference to the past. We have the best example of My Last Duchess by Robert Browning. Here also you see in the next poem by Last Duchess, that's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece of wonder now. Fra Pandolf's hands work busily a day, and there she stands. So here you observe the very abrupt beginning. That's my last Duchess painted on the wall. You see here that there is an abrupt beginning. And again, he say that's my last Duchess. That's my last Duchess. And something that is related to the past is referred, right? So here the Duchess who belong to some past history, right? He's recalling that past, isn't it? Anyhow, likewise, what has gone before is not actually stated in the long introduction, but it points out to cleverly, that's my last Duchess. Single phrase tells us that something related to the past. Yeah, there is abrupt beginning also here. Okay, when we move on to next part, see in both the cases, either in Dover Beach or in my last Duchess, you see that the poet is trying to express his emotions, his moods, his reflections in the sense, his thoughts, and his meditations, of course. They are completely expressed. A vent for his feelings is provided through the poem. What a poet feels about his age or a particular critical situation is completely expressed through the poem. Okay, that is often a general or universally acclaimed thing or acknowledged idea, right? Anyhow, but sometimes there is no logical or chronological development. You see, breaking down of that logic, there is no ordered presentation, starting with opening and then developing and closing. That kind of logical connection isn't there. Sometimes it goes back to past. You see in the poems like Dover Beach, maybe we're going to see that later. You see, the speaker's thoughts range freely over past and future, but the focus is on the present. As we saw in the last slide also, the focus is on the present. It ranges between the past and present. Okay, so maybe in this example of Dover Beach again, you see somewhere in the middle, you have a reference to Sophocles long ago. In the second stanza, you see Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. See, the Sophocles belonged to earlier ages BC, before Christ ages, 3rd century, 4th century BC. And the poem brings us back to that era once, but the purpose of bringing us back there is not to cling on to or attach to that past, but to take some inference. You see here that he also found that human misery. Then itself he had that perception, and he found that human misery then itself. That is expressed here, right? Anyhow, so therefore, a kind of shifting from past to present is possible in dramatic monologues. Yeah, by going through these features, it's clear what are the functions it does. It's a better tool to a poet to express his thoughts, isn't it? What do you feel? Definitely. Because through a speaker, a poet can express all his inner thoughts, his feelings. And he doesn't have to say this openly that he is the one who is speaking. But he can adopt somebody else as a speaker, an imagined speaker sometimes, and then he can express his feelings about his age. Therefore, it helps a poet use a very powerful word spoken. A poet doesn't have to use his words directly as a poet, but through the speaker, he can speak very powerful words. He can make a very critical comment of the present era, of his contemporary times. Okay? Then it allows the character to express themselves, isn't it? Not only the poet's feelings, but for a character. If somebody has adopted some character, see in you have Tennyson's, Alfred Lord Tennyson's Ulysses. That's also a famous dramatic monologue. He takes the example of Homer's character, Homer's epic Odysseus character Ulysses. There, Ulysses expresses his feelings, right? Expresses themselves in the present context, right? You see that kind of usage. And therefore, by all this, it's a convenient device to present different characters and their inner thoughts. Okay? Don't you feel so? Dramatic monologue is a very convenient device, a very convenient poetic technique to present different characters and their inner thoughts. I'm not telling you here about one particular dramatic monologue, because in a single dramatic monologue you find a single character, a single speaker. But through various dramatic monologues, a poet can adopt any number of speakers and can express his ideas and thoughts. The famous Victorians who have composed dramatic monologues are there here. You see Robert Browning's My Last Duchess, The Ring and the Book, The Frolly Polypy. These are famous dramatic monologues by Robert Browning. We also have Alfred Lord Tennyson's Ulysses, Tithonus, The Lotus Eaters, Saint Simon Stylites. We have Matthew Arnold's Dover Beach, stanzas from. These are, and Dante Gabriel Rossetti is also a dramatic monologue writer who has got the blessed damsel, for example. So these are all the various works produced. These are major poets. There are minor poets also who have produced dramatic monologues in the Victorian age of poetry, right? So here then it's clear for you that monologue or soliloquy was used as a theatrical technique before years, for ages, right? It was invented centuries ago as a dramatic technique. Whereas when we come to dramatic monologue, the poetic form of that monologue or soliloquy developed as dramatic monologue, and it became definitely perfected in, it was perfected in the Victorian age. And we also notice dramatic monologue as a poetic form with all these characteristics provides a very good vent, a perfect vent for a poet to express his feelings and thoughts. Isn't it? Then dramatic monologue is a very important feature of poetry, and a poetic form that we have to study. Thank you for watching. See you in the next class.